The sky over the launch bay was a pale orange, streaked with thick clouds and distant flashes of orbital engines. Sergeant Cole Virek stood near the loading ramp of Dropcraft 17, helmet tucked under his arm, his eyes tracing the horizon without really seeing it. Beneath the metallic tang of fuel and ozone, the scent of rain lingered. A storm was coming, both in the sky and on the ground below. He'd been on 37 deployments across 6 star systems. Some were simple mop-ups, others bloodbaths. This one felt different, though no one would say it aloud. Not even the grizzled vets from the third siege of Taloras dared to joke about Neretsa. "They're sending the whole damn army," said Corporal Juno Maris, adjusting the harness over her shoulder. Her voice carried the forced casualness of someone trying to deny the tension. "You ever hear of that? 10,000 soldiers to scout Iraq." Virek didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at the screen embedded in his vambrace. Red icons marked the drop zones, arranged like teeth biting into the shadowy mass labeled Neretsa. The planet was covered in dense jungle, electromagnetic anomalies, and a persistent signal that defied translation. That signal was the reason they were going. That signal, and the silence that followed it. "I've heard worse reasons," he said finally, voice low. "They say a scout drone sent back images of a structure. Massive. Alien tech. Not built by any of the knowns. Then it stopped transmitting. Then the next drone. Then a ship. Gone. Good enough reason to send us." "Huh?" Juno muttered, half smiling. "Hey, when we find the Alien Welcome Committee, you want to do the talking?" He gave her a look, and for a brief moment, the corner of his mouth twitched. "You've got a better voice." The boarding call cut the conversation short. Troops surged forward, boots thudding in rhythmic unison against the reinforced deck plates. Virek moved with them, slipping into the dropcraft and taking position with Echo Squad. The interior was dim, lit by red overheads and the glow of tactical displays. No one spoke as the doors sealed and the ship began its descent. Captain Rosh, their unit lead, stood near the front, one gloved hand gripping a support strut. Her face, half hidden beneath a tactical visor, was taut with purpose. "Echo, listen up," she barked over the intercom. "We're heading to LZ Delta 6. Our objective is recon and environmental analysis. Priority is the alien structure. Command wants eyes on it within 48 hours. Rules of engagement are green-lighted for all non-human hostiles. Assume everything's hostile until proven otherwise." A grunt of acknowledgement rippled through the squad. As the ship punched into Neretsa's atmosphere, turbulence hit like a hammer. The hull groaned. The noise was deafening, but Virek barely flinched. He had his eyes closed, fingers resting on the grip of his rifle. He wasn't praying. He didn't believe in gods anymore. But he had rituals, breathing patterns, internal checks, mentally rehearsing extraction routes and threat responses. That was his gospel. They touched down in a clearing carved out by orbital blasts. A few other drop craft had landed nearby, swarming with troops and mobile command units. The trees loomed high and close, leaves the size of hover bikes, their veins glowing faintly in the twilight. Everything moved too quietly. Virek stepped out last. His boots sank half an inch into the loamy ground. Moisture clung to the air, thick with the scent of chlorophyll and something metallic beneath it. The jungle was vibrant, almost beautiful, colors more saturated than any earth-grown plant, shapes twisting in ways that made his brain itch. Juno fell in beside him. "Looks like a tourist holovideo. Looks like a trap," he murmured. Over the next hours, the forward base came together with mechanical precision. Autofab spat out prefab walls, turrets, and sensor arrays. Command tents inflated into place. Power conduits snaked like vines between generator units. Despite the jungle's humidity and the team's exhaustion, the UCF worked like clockwork. By nightfall, they had their perimeter established and defenses armed. Virek monitored drone feeds from their quadrant. Nothing moved beyond the tree line. No heat signatures. No ambient life detected beyond insects and native foliage. And yet, the jungle seemed to breathe around them, an invisible pulse beneath the silence. It was the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty but watchful. Captain Rosh met with squad leaders in the command tent. When she emerged, her expression was harder than before. "We move at dawn," she said, addressing Echo Squad. "Pathfinders report electromagnetic interference, increasing the closer we get to the signal origin. Long-range comms are unstable. We're going in with short range only. Stick tight. No splitting up." Juno whistled softly. "They don't waste time." "Neither do these things," said Virek, tapping the side of his helmet. His HUD displayed faint static, anomalous, low-grade interference. Not enough to cripple them, but enough to scratch a corner of his brain. That night, Virek barely slept. His tent was quiet, the jungle just beyond the reinforced fabric like a wall of breathing dark. He lay with his eyes open, listening. Once he thought he heard movement, like branches cracking, but when he stepped out to investigate, there was nothing. Just the glow of bioluminescent fungi and the mechanical whir of perimeter drones sweeping the area. In the morning, they moved out. Echo Squad led the northern expedition, assigned to scout a path through the densest part of the jungle. Virek took point, machete in one hand, rifle slung across his back. Every step forward felt like trespassing into something ancient and territorial. Hours passed. No sign of anything, not even birds. Only the occasional strange plant that retracted as they passed, as if flinching. The signal strength rose incrementally on their scanners, but so did the static. It distorted their HUDs, garbled communications, and left a growing sense of disconnection. Still, they pushed on. It was near dusk when they found the first sign. A helmet. UCF issue. Partially buried in vines. No body. Then, a little further on, drag marks. Deep gouges in the earth. Blood. Burn marks on a tree trunk, as if something had scorched it at impossible angles. Juno knelt near the tracks. Her voice trembled slightly. "This isn't weeks old. This is fresh." "Something hit another unit," Virek said. "They weren't ready." Captain Rosh ordered an immediate fallback to regroup. But before they could turn, the jungle came alive. First came a sound, a low thrum, like a living engine. Then a screech, unlike anything human. Figures moved through the underbrush, fast and low, shapes half glimpsed but unmistakably wrong. Bullets and energy bolts tore through the foliage. Echo Squad opened fire in a controlled line, but the creatures were too quick, too smart. One soldier was yanked into the trees. Another went down screaming as his exosuit short-circuited mid-combat. Virek fought on instinct, firing blind through leaves and shadows. He saw Juno covering a retreat path, her rifle glowing hot, before she vanished behind a crashing wall of vines. And then, silence again, like nothing had happened. Virek was alone. His heart thundered in his chest, every instinct screaming to move, to run, but his training overrode it. He dropped to a knee, checking his position, recalibrating his HUD manually. Blood trickled from a gash above his brow. The signal was louder now, an audible pulse, faint and rhythmic like a heartbeat. It was coming from the east, deeper into the jungle. He had a choice: return to the last known position and hope someone survived, or follow the signal, the only lead they had. He chose the signal. As he disappeared into the green twilight, the vines seemed to close behind him, swallowing the trail. His last message pinged briefly across the unstable comms before fading into static. "This is Vyrek. Echo is down. Continuing mission." The jungle didn't answer, but it was listening. The forest swallowed him whole. Every direction looked the same. Twisting trunks, leaf canopies blotting out the dim sunlight, and an air so thick with moisture it felt like walking underwater. Sergeant Cole Vyrek moved slowly, methodically, the barrel of his rifle cutting a cautious path through the ferns. His HUD flickered with noise, icons blinking in and out as the interference worsened. The signal pulsed steadily, like a beacon guiding him towards something ancient and malignant. He marked his route with digital breadcrumbs, knowing full well it wouldn't matter. The terrain shifted when you weren't looking. Twice, he turned around to find familiar landmarks gone. Narezzo was alive. Not metaphorically, truly alive. Sentient or not, the jungle seemed aware of his presence. His thigh burned where shrapnel had grazed him during the ambush. He'd wrapped it, injected a coagulant, but the pain was a constant reminder. He was wounded, alone, and deep inside enemy territory, with no clear understanding of what the enemy even was. 2 hours in, he stumbled upon the remains of another squad. The uniforms were charred, some fused to bone. Weapons lay scattered and broken, their power cores drained. One helmet had been crushed inward, not by a bullet or blade, but something stronger, something that gripped. Vyrek crouched beside the wreckage and examined the surroundings. No signs of firefight, no shell casings, no signs of retreat. Whatever happened here had been swift, clean, precise. He lifted a small, blackened badge from a scorched chest plate. Bravo 3-2. They'd landed to the southeast, nearly 20 clicks from his original position. That meant whatever was hunting them wasn't confined to a single zone. It moved across the map faster than any animal or troop should have. It stalked the living from the shadows, then erased them from existence like a ghost made of instinct and teeth. He kept moving. The next 24 hours blurred. No sleep, only movement. He rationed his energy cells, avoided using active scans, and relied on his eyes more than tech. Once, he heard a voice behind him. Juno's voice, laughing, whispering his name. He turned, weapon raised, but there was only jungle. Another time, he saw a human silhouette 50 meters ahead. It stood perfectly still, motionless among the trees. When he advanced, it evaporated into mist. Exhaustion crept in, stealing time, compressing minutes into uncertain gaps. The jungle never truly turned to night. Bioluminescent plants lit the undergrowth, casting ghostly hues across the forest floor. His mind ached from the constant awareness, from the strain of watching every angle, from trying to predict a predator he didn't understand. Then came the storm. A wall of rain, sudden and violent, smashed through the canopy. The downpour soaked him to the bone within seconds. He took shelter beneath a massive root arch, rigging a thermal blanket and camo netting. As he crouched in silence, the rain drowning all sound, he allowed himself a single moment to close his eyes. He dreamt of Earth, of his sister, Mia, running through their backyard in springtime. Her laughter echoed through green fields, innocent and far from war. Then the scene fractured. Mia turned to him with hollow eyes, her mouth opening wide to scream. He jolted awake. The rain had stopped. A pink haze drifted between the trees. Not mist, spores, glowing faintly. He pulled his mask on, adjusted the seal, and checked his vitals. Heart rate spiked. Temperature elevated. Hallucinations were starting to come faster. Was it exhaustion or was something in the air? He pressed forward, heading toward the signal's source. He didn't find it first. What he found was them. They emerged from the trees like statues waking from stone. Six-legged creatures, their skin a mesh of natural armor and refractive tissue, shifting colors to blend with the environment. Their eyes, if they were eyes, glowed pale blue, scanning with alien detachment. Their limbs moved too smoothly, too intelligently. They weren't animals. Vyrek froze. One of them tilted its head. Then, without warning, it shrieked. A piercing, echoing sound that wasn't meant to be heard so much as felt. A psychic blade scraping against thought. He fired. His first burst hit center mass, but the creature barely flinched. It darted sideways, faster than anything that size had a right to move. Another dropped from a tree above, claws slashing. He rolled, fired again. This time the round caught something vital. The creature spasmed and fell, oozing bioluminescent fluid. Vyrek ran. He moved on instinct now, crashing through the brush, blind to direction, deaf to strategy. All that mattered was escape. Branches clawed at his arms, vines wrapped around his boots. He didn't stop until he hit a ravine and fell hard, sliding into a shallow stream below. His HUD cracked on impact. Blood filled his mouth. He crawled to a half-submerged tree and used it for cover, breath ragged, vision swimming. The creatures didn't follow. For a long time, there was only silence. When he finally rose, he was shaking. His suit's power reserve had dropped dangerously low. Comms were completely offline. He took a stimulant, forcing clarity into his limbs. There was no going back. The creatures weren't territorial. They were exterminators. Programmed, maybe, or worse, aware. If the UCF command had known what waited on this planet, they wouldn't have sent 10,000 troops. They'd have nuked it from orbit. As he moved again, slower now, careful, he caught sight of a strange glimmer through the trees. Faint pulsing, not natural. The structure. He pushed through the underbrush and emerged at the edge of a vast clearing. The jungle stopped abruptly, like it had been cut away. In the center stood a monolith, hundreds of meters tall, black and smooth like obsidian, covered in alien runes that shimmered and shifted under his gaze. It hummed with energy, vibrating the air around it. This was the origin point, the source of the signal, the reason they were here. Around its base were corpses, dozens, UCF soldiers, their bodies piled in heaps. Some half disassembled, others merged with the ground. All of them bore expressions of terror, frozen mid-scream. Vyrek's legs threatened to give out. He crouched behind a fallen transport chassis and scanned the area. No visible hostiles. No movement. The monolith pulsed once. A wave of pressure hit him like a hammer. His vision fractured. He staggered backward, clutching his helmet. Shapes flickered at the edges of his perception. Familiar shapes. Faces. Juno. Captain Rosh. His old CO from Cygni Delta. His sister. Cole, said Mia's voice, warm and wrong. You're not supposed to be here. He tore the helmet off. Shut his eyes. Gritted his teeth. It's not real. You're not real. The pressure lifted. When he looked again, the monolith stood silent, watching. Something lived inside it. Something that didn't kill with claws or teeth, but by unraveling minds, corrupting memories, manipulating thoughts. And it was waking up. Vyrek backed away slowly, keeping the structure in his periphery. He didn't dare turn his back on it. He needed a plan. He needed explosives. He needed to destroy that thing before it spread. His comm unit sparked to life for half a second. Just static. But beneath it, a faint voice. Anyone survivors respond. His eyes narrowed. He traced the signal. It was coming from a crashed transport, half buried in vines, 20 meters to his left. A slim chance. A fragile hope. But in this place, even hope was dangerous. He ran toward it anyway. And behind him, the monolith pulsed again. Smoke curled from the remains of the transport shuttle as Vyrek climbed through its shattered hull. The scent of scorched plastic and ozone clung to everything. Inside, flickering control panels painted the cockpit in ghostly flashes of blue and red. Wires hung like veins from the ceiling. He moved carefully, rifle raised, not trusting anything in this place, not even silence. The voice had come from here, a broadcast, faint and corrupted, but unmistakably human. He reached the comms console, pried open a warped access panel, and began rerouting power. The interface resisted him at every step, fighting him like the jungle outside. After 5 agonizing minutes, the console hummed weakly to life, its screen a haze of static and fractured data. UCF Echo 1, he whispered. Sergeant Cole Virek, if you're receiving this. Static. Then, Virek, you're alive. He froze. The voice was real. Scratchy, broken, but real. Who is this? Lieutenant Riven. I'm at Site Theta. We saw your beacon spike. Figure was interference. How many survivors? His chest tightened. The question hit harder than expected. None, he said after a pause. Just me. Silence on the line. Then, copy that. Her voice dropped lower. We've sealed ourselves in. Something's happening. The jungle, it's not passive anymore. It learns. Everything we do, it mimics. I don't know how long we have. Virek leaned against the console, rainwater dripping from his armor. I found the structure, the one broadcasting the signal. God, it's real then. Some of us thought it was bait. Psychological warfare. Do you know what it is? I don't think we have a word for it. Another pause. Then we destroy it. He knew the truth even before she said it. Site Theta housed a prototype orbital transmitter, a comms array powerful enough to punch through planetary interference. If it still functioned, he could reroute its energy reserves, trigger an overload in the monolith's core. A suicide mission, but clean, effective. I'm coming to you, he said. Copy. Be fast. The signal cut. Outside, the jungle had grown darker. Not from nightfall, but from density. The trees loomed closer, their trunks shifting slightly when unobserved. Roots crawled like snakes across the ground. The air was thicker now, humming with insect chatter and an electric tension that crawled across the skin. Virek moved with urgency, drawing on fading adrenaline. Every step toward Site Theta felt like defiance. He passed remnants of once great structures overtaken by moss and silence. Forward bases, now reduced to bones. Drones hung in vines like rusting birds. The occasional broken helmet reminded him of the cost already paid. An hour in, he saw motion. A figure, human, or something trying to be, stood ahead. A woman in torn fatigues. Blonde. Familiar. His breath caught. Juno. She turned, expression blank. No warmth in her eyes. He raised his weapon. She blinked and dissolved into spores. A trap. A test. The forest didn't just mimic form. It learned faces, voices, fears. That minute understood emotion. It exploited it. He didn't stop again. 3 hours into the trek, his body screamed for rest. Muscles locked. Blood crusted beneath his armor. But Site Theta's perimeter sensors came into view. Metal pylons barely functional, emitting irregular pulses. He crossed through them and found the entrance. A massive steel door embedded in the mountainside, half covered in ivy. He banged on it twice with the butt of his rifle. A moment passed. Then a hiss of hydraulics, a flicker of recognition. The door groaned open. Inside, 6 soldiers in ragged gear greeted him with wide eyes and cautious weapons. Behind them stood Lieutenant Riven, tall, ash-faced, a scar across her jaw from some recent skirmish. Her armor was patched with jungle leaf camo, and her sidearm hung low from her hip. "You made it," she said. For now. They led him through concrete corridors lit by flickering emergency lights. Site Theta had been a science outpost before everything went wrong. Its lab spaces were now barracks. The mess hall had become a triage center. Maps were pinned across walls with color-coded zones. Red, lost. Yellow, hostile. Green, none left. "How long can you hold?" he asked. She gave a bleak smile. 12 hours. Maybe less. We're seeing breaches in places that were secure yesterday. Something's evolving. It's coordinating now. They brought him to the transmitter core. Its systems blinked weakly, straining against age and energy starvation. "Can it be overloaded?" he asked. "Only manually. We need to divert the entire auxiliary grid. It'll blow a hole the size of city block." "Will it be enough to destroy the monolith?" "Probably not. But to damage it, to break the link, it might." He didn't ask what came after. He already knew. He removed his gloves and got to work. Together, they began rerouting power, tearing out redundant fail-safes, pushing the array toward critical failure. The process would take hours, and once begun, couldn't be stopped. At one point, Riven looked at him. "What did you see out there?" He hesitated. "Everything I feared." She nodded. "I lost my entire platoon," she said quietly. "Watched them vanish. Thought I was going mad." "You weren't." "I know," she said. "That's what scares me." A red light lit up on the panel. The overload sequence had begun. 90 minutes until detonation. He keyed in the final command, syncing the output with the coordinates of the monolith. A targeting laser pinged its location from orbit through the thinnest gap in the canopy. It was like threading a needle with a missile. Then came the first tremor. The jungle had found them. Outside, the perimeter alarm screeched. Screams echoed down the hallways. One of the surviving soldiers bolted to the entrance, only to be dragged back seconds later, his legs gone, his voice gargling blood. "Seal it!" Riven shouted. Metal doors slammed shut. Screeching claws hammered on the other side. The walls vibrated with unnatural shrieks. Alien, but twisted with pieces of human sound. Voices the jungle had stolen. Voices it was now using. "Cole!" came a whisper from the speaker grid. His sister's voice again. "Please, don't leave me." He stared at the ceiling, jaw clenched. "They're trying to stop the transmission," Riven said. "They won't." The creatures began tearing through the outer layers of the facility. Pipes burst. The lights died. Emergency red flooded the corridors. Screams grew closer. Virek and Riven stood side by side, weapons ready. The timer on the console blinked down. 36 minutes and 15 seconds. One of the creatures breached the hall. It was faster than before, sleeker, armored in ways it hadn't been hours earlier. It had learned how to deflect bullets, how to bend light. They opened fire anyway, driving it back with sheer volume. More came. A swarm. Virek knew they wouldn't hold the line. But they didn't have to. They just had to buy time. As he emptied his last magazine into the horde, the timer dropped below 10 minutes. The monolith would feel the spike of energy by now. It would be reaching out, trying to defend itself. He could feel it clawing at the edge of his thoughts. He locked eyes with Riven. "You go." "No," she said simply. The door behind them burst open, and the final battle began. The detonation tore through the jungle with a silence so profound it stole the breath from the air. There was no dramatic sound, no thunderous explosion, only a flash of light, white and absolute, followed by a stillness more terrifying than any scream. Site Theta vanished in an instant, reduced to ash and fractured stone. The monolith, once humming with alien energy, cracked under the pressure of the overload, its surface glowing briefly before rupturing in a cascade of molten shards. When Virek opened his eyes, he wasn't sure if he had died. The sky above was no longer hidden by dense canopy. It was open, revealing a blood-orange dusk that painted the ruined treetops. The forest had been quieted. Not destroyed, not entirely, but broken. The vibrant, invasive life that had pulsed like a living heart was gone. Only scorched earth and the smell of ozone remained. He lay sprawled across what had once been a command deck, now a crater rim. His armor was fused in places, shredded in others. Every movement sent lightning through his nerves, but pain meant he was alive. His HUD blinked erratically, unable to stabilize. A gash above his temple had dried to a thick crust, and one I refused to open. Riven was gone. He knew without needing to search. She had stayed behind, just like he had. The difference was chance. A wall had fallen in the last moment, shielding him. She'd been on the other side, and now she was part of the dust and the wind. For a while, he didn't move. He watched the slow crawl of smoke across the horizon, waiting for the jungle to retaliate, for some hidden force to surge from the roots and finish what had begun. But nothing came. The mimicry had stopped. The voices had ceased. It was as if the forest no longer remembered how to lie. Eventually, he pulled himself upright, every muscle screaming in protest. A broken rifle lay near his feet, its barrel warped. He left it. Weapons wouldn't matter anymore. His next steps were aimless, driven by instinct more than direction. He moved like a ghost through the remains of the compound, past the bodies of fallen comrades, some human, others no longer recognizable. The creatures had melted down with a monolith, their forms unstable without its influence. Where once they had mimicked faces, now they were sludge and twisted limbs, half-formed mouths frozen mid-scream. He found a med kit in a partially intact room and patched what wounds he could. Painkillers dulled the edges of agony, but the fatigue went deeper than the flesh. It was bone deep, soul deep. He hadn't slept in days, maybe longer. Time had become irrelevant in this place. Hours passed, or maybe they didn't. There was no rhythm to mark them. Eventually, he stumbled across a working console, cracked but functional. Emergency systems were trying to reboot. He triggered a low-band distress signal, repeating the phrase over and over, survivor at Site Theta, requesting extraction. He didn't expect a reply, not after everything, but the transmission pulsed into the void, a heartbeat against oblivion. On the second day, clouds rolled in. Rain fell, light and clean. Not acidic, not corrupt, just water. Vyrek stood beneath it and let it soak through his ruined armor. It washed the blood from his skin, the soot from his face. He didn't cry, he couldn't. Something inside had hardened, sealed away. On the third day, a shadow moved across the sky. At first, he thought it was another hallucination. But then the engines followed, a low hum, mechanical and familiar. A drop ship descended through the clearing, its paint scorched but intact, bearing the crest of the United Colonial Fleet. It hovered just above the tree line, kicking up ash in thick spirals. A voice crackled through the comms. "Sergeant Vyrek, we read your beacon. Confirm identity." He stepped into the open, lifting one shaking hand. "Cole Vyrek, UCF Recon 6. There was a pause. Then confirmed. "Stand by for extraction." The ramp descended. Armed Marines fanned out, their weapons raised. They expected a threat, but Vyrek was alone. They ushered him aboard, eyes wide as they scanned the destruction below. No one spoke as the hatch sealed behind him. No one asked questions. He collapsed into a seat and let the vibration of departure lull him into darkness. He awoke in orbit. White walls, soft lighting, medical sensors chirping softly at his side. A nurse glanced up as he stirred, offering a tired smile. "You're safe," she said. He looked away. They debriefed him over several days. Scientists, officers, psychologists. They dissected his story piece by piece, asking the same questions in different orders. Was the monolith sentient? How had the jungle evolved? What had triggered the collapse? He gave them what they wanted, but they never truly understood. They were too far removed. They hadn't felt it. They named the incident Echo Black, a containment breach of unknown origin. The planet was quarantined, orbital satellites repositioned to ensure nothing survived. Data was sealed, records classified. Officially, it never happened. Virek didn't care. He was given a commendation, a medal, a new rank. None of it mattered. He declined reassignment, declined command. He left the fleet entirely within weeks, disappearing to the edge of settled space. Somewhere quiet, somewhere green, but not alive in the way that jungle had been. A place where trees didn't whisper in voices stolen from the dead. He built a cabin, learned to be still. The nightmares came often, at first. Voices in the wind, shadows in the corners of his vision. He didn't run from them. He faced them, night after night, until they lost their shape. One morning, years later, he found a flower blooming at the edge of his land. Bright red, familiar. He stared at it for a long time, then crushed it beneath his boot. There were still questions left unanswered. Who built the monolith? Why had it chosen that planet? Was it a weapon, or something worse, a seed, waiting to be sown? The fleet would search. Other teams would come, eventually. Curiosity was hard to kill, but Virek knew the truth. Some places weren't meant to be conquered. Some worlds fought back, and some wars left only silence behind. He sat on his porch that evening, watching the stars blink through the canopy. His hand rested on a data chip, its casing worn with age. Inside were the final logs from Site Theta. Riven's voice, the last transmissions of his squad. He'd never played them. Not once. He didn't need to. He remembered every word. He was the last one left. But he wasn't alone. Not really.